In this video tutorial, this is part 3 of making your photo collage in Adobe Photoshop. Hopefully by now you've already finished the first video tutorial and second one, and you should have all of your photos placed into your collage at this point. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do some finishing touches to really bring everything together and make it look really nice. We're going to put some borders around each of our photos, and we'll make some edits to adjust any color contrast issues and just make it look really nice. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have you guys look over in your layers panel over in the bottom right corner, and you're going to select one of your rectangles. So I'm going to work from the top of my layers panel down. You can see this first layer up here is my photograph that I have clipped down to this blue rectangle. We want to be clicking on the rectangle layer, not the photo layer that's clipped. So making sure I have the rectangle layer selected, I'm going to right click to bring up a menu, and you're going to go and look for blending options. You click on it. Over here on the left hand side, you can see an option called stroke. Go ahead and click on stroke, and over here we can kind of choose what we want our stroke to look like. So I'm going to make the pixels, or the size, the width of the line, 20 pixels. You can see the live preview happening over here because I have the preview checked. So you can kind of use the slider to see what you think looks good. Me personally, I like 20, so that's what I'm going to do. I want the position here to be inside. That means the line's coming into my photo instead of like pushing outside of the photo. This can all stay. And then lastly, you can choose your color. So I think white looks really nice. Black could also look really nice. You can also go with the color, but I think neutrals will probably work best for most people's photos, but feel free to experiment. If you click on color, you'll see it'll bring up your color picker. Over here I have a little white circle that's over in the white area. But you can drag it over here to make it red. Over here you can see the full color spectrum. Little arrows are down here in red. I can push it up to whatever part of the color spectrum I want, and you'll see it change live over here. Once again, I'm going to stick with white, but you do what suits you best. Okay. And okay. So I want to apply the same white stroke to all of my rectangles. So to do this in a really quick way, what I'm going to do is, still with that first blue rectangle selected that I just added the effect to, I'm going to right click it again, and you should see where it says copy layer style. I'm going to hit that, and now I'm just going to select all my other rectangles. So again, we're looking for the rectangle layers, not the photos that we have clipped down to them. So you'll notice the rectangle layers are sticking out more to the left. The pictures above them are kind of indented in, so that's an easy way to tell which one's the rectangle as well. So I'm going to click on the next one down. Then I'm going to hit the Command button on my keyboard, Command, and hit the next rectangle down. So now I have two highlighted at the same time. I'm going to go down, hit the Command button again, click the next rectangle, so I have 3 selected, hit the Command button, hit the next rectangle, hit the Command button. Okay, so now I have all of my remaining rectangles highlighted or selected, and I can right click, and I'm just going to paste layer style. Okay, so now I have that same 20 pixel stroke applied to all of my frames. One thing that you will notice is that the frame around the outside of the image is a little bit thinner than the lines inside. That's because what's really going on here is I have two 20 pixel lines bumped right up next to each other here. So what you're in effect seeing is a 40 pixel line because it's the two put together. Over here it's just still the 20 because it's only one line, there's nothing next to it. So I'd like it all to be even. So one way that we can make the outside border a little bit thicker is we're going to scroll all the way to the top of our layers panel. I'm going to hit the top layer up here, whatever's on top. I have a photo up there. And I'm just going to hit the Create New Layer button. And that's going to add a new blank layer all the way at the top of the list. Once I have that, I want to make sure that it's not just an empty transparent layer, which you can tell it's transparent because it has those little checkers on there. I want it to be filled with some kind of color. What color it's filled with doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go to my paint bucket tool over here and I'm just going to click. And I have filled it with white. Then I'm going to go over to my layers panel and I'm going to look where it says fill, and I'm going to change the fill down to 0, which brings my pictures back. And then I'm just going to right click on the layer and go back to blending options just like I did with the other ones, and I'm going to go to stroke again, and instead of 20 I'm going to make it 40. Since that's what we figured out the middle ones are. 20 plus 20 is 40. So depending on, whatever your stroke was, if you did a 10 pixel stroke, then you would just double it and make it 20 now. You're just doubling whatever your first value that you chose was. So for me, I did 20 initially, and now I'm going to change that to 40 and hit OK. And now you can see the outside border is thicker and matches the inside lines. Alright, so those are my borders all done. Your last step on this project is if there's any adjustment layers that you want to add to fool around with the color, the brightness, the contrast, saturation, vibrance, just to kind of make everything look the best it can look, then you can do that. Down here at the bottom of your layers panel, this little button here that looks like a circle that's half white and half black, you can click on that and that will show you some different adjustment layers that you can play around with. A couple that I would use, but again you can do yours differently, it doesn't have to be how I do mine, is I would do maybe a curves. When you pull up curves, you'll get this little graph with a big diagonal line going across it. If you click somewhere along the top of the line, you can kind of click and drag it and shift it up or shift it down, and you can kind of notice the effects it's having on your photos. That's pushing the lighter values of my photo brighter or darker. If I click more towards the bottom and choose a point and kind of pull it down or push it up, again you can see now we're working with kind of the shadow areas of the photo and we're making them brighter or we're making them darker. And similarly you can click somewhere in the middle and push it up or down, and that's going to work with more of the middle values. Generally speaking, creating a very subtle slight S kind of curve will usually look pretty nice. So another thing we can fool around with here is vibrance. You can turn your saturation down if you want it a little more subtle, or you can push it up for brighter colors. Less is more with this type of thing. Generally speaking, it doesn't look too good to go overboard with the vibrance. Your skin will end up looking all sorts of weird neon colors and it's just not very natural. I think kind of keeping it a bit more subtle towards the middle is fine. You could also go completely black and white with this too and just turn the saturation all the way down to the bottom there, and you can have black and white images, and that's definitely an option. up to you. I'm going to just turn mine down a little bit. You can also work with the vibrance here. Turn it up a little bit, turn it down. I'm going to turn mine up a little. Okay, and just to give you some more ideas, you can also work with exposure or brightness and contrast are good ones. So exposure, I can lighten things a little bit. This too, you obviously don't want to go overboard. You don't want the light values to get blown out like this where it's just way too light. So, you know, little subtle changes are usually all that it takes. All right, so you guys can keep playing around with your adjustment layers and just tweaking things until you like the look of it, and then we can save our work. So when we save our work, just to review, we're going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to name this my name, Mrs. Cook, and the project name, Personal Collage. So your name and Personal Collage will be good. I'm saving mine to Google Drive. It's always a good habit to save a Photoshop version of your file. It's especially the case if you do not finish your project in one class period and you're going to need to continue working on it the next class period. By saving the Photoshop format, when you open up your file next class period, you will look over here and all of your same little layers will be over here, so you can go back in and adjust your individual photos, move them around, and continue your work. If you do not have it in Photoshop format, when you open it back up, you're just going to have one solid image. You won't have your layers over here, so you won't be able to go back and specifically edit certain layers. So always save a Photoshop format, especially if you are not done with your work. So I'm going to save. I'll do one because I already did one, so it's telling me I already have that file name. Okay, and just hit OK when this comes up. Alright, so we have our Photoshop document saved, which is great. When you are all done with your photo collage and you're ready to upload it to Schoology, you cannot upload a Photoshop format document to Schoology. You cannot. Okay, it will not accept that file type. So we're going to go to File and we're going to Save As to save a second version of this collage. And all you have to do here is we're going to look at the format where it says Photoshop and we're just going to change it to JPEG. Okay, and save. Schoology will accept JPEGs. It's a smaller file, so they're better for uploading to the internet. And then just over here, these are going to be images just for uploading to Schoology, so we want our file size to be on the smaller side to make sure that they upload okay to the internet. So I'm going to put mine somewhere in the middle, quality 5, 6, 7, that kind of range, and hit OK. And that will be the version that we turn into Schoology. Alright guys, have fun making your collage. Ask me with any questions. Thanks.